this is the old blower. I'm going to hook it up and run it a little bit so you can hear what it sounds like when it's going bad. So you'll know if yours is going bad. Didn't have this squeal all the time. It did a little bit and would stop, and then over time, maybe over 3-4 months, it would get worse and worse, and then pretty soon it wouldn't start at all. So here's the nasty squeal of the old motor. So you can hear the bearings are really dry. They're tight, but I can turn, as soon as I get my finger off, it'll stop. So this one definitely, the old one is running without any lubrication. The new one, you can flip the wheel and it'll go around quite a few times before it stops. So this one's a piece of garbage, and it's thrown away. If you have noise coming from the front that sounds like the blower is bad, the blower is bad. But if the blower's not behaving well, like it won't run on lower speed, it only runs full speed, or it won't run at all, it may not be the blower, especially if it's a newer vehicle. This vehicle is 14 years old now, and the blower finally wore out, and after 160,000 miles. So that's a good life, but if your blower is newer, it may not be the blower that's the problem. It might be the speed controller. Right here is this block that has the cord to the motor, and it's got a cord from the vehicle, basically, that gives it power and ground and signal. And this block, could be the source of the problem you have. So when I originally had this blower problem, I went down the path of thinking this controller might be bad, and I ended up buying a new one and swapped it out, and it did not make a change. And then I was pretty confident that the blower was actually going bad. It wasn't squealing all the time like it did here when I finally took it apart, but it was starting to misbehave. And I also found out that this vehicle has front and rear, a front and rear comfort system, basically. So there's actually another blower in the back, and I believe it's probably the same blower part number. When I took that apart a little bit, the panels off the back, and looked inside, I could see the blower and another controller back there. So I pulled the controllers out, and this controller part number on the part was the same as in the back. So I didn't have to buy a new one. I could have just swapped the back and the front, which is something you could do without having to buy a new one and finding out you don't need it. The other thing is, pulling this block out and swapping it is much, much easier, of course, than changing out that blower. It's also about twice as expensive to buy this controller for the vehicles that don't have just a resistor block. If you have an automatic temperature control system where the fan speed varies continuously, this block is different than just a resistor block where your controller is just kind of a low, medium, high selection. And so this block can cost twice what a blower can. If it was me next time, I think I would just go after the blower, and if I was curious about the controller, I'd just look in the back and swap the two if they were the same part number, and just make sure nothing changed, and then rip the blower out. If the problem went away, then the controller's bad, and that should be replaced. So that's a hint. You may not need to buy a new controller. If you have one in the back, you can just swap it and see if that fixes the problem. Swapping this with the back only probably takes maybe an hour, or maybe 45 minutes. Swapping the blower in this vehicle took, if I were to do it again, first time, knowing what I know now, from the video I'm trying to make and convey to you, the blower would probably take me a couple hours. So, it's up to you. but at least now you know the back and the front controllers may be the same part number, and you might be able to just swap these and see what happens. First step is disconnect the negative lead on the battery. This is a 3.8 liter engine on a 2001 Chrysler Town & Country Limited, and so I have the negative disconnected here. Positive can stay connected. Just make sure this negative lead is disconnected, and this has got enough stiffness where it's not going to come back and contact the post. And that takes a 10 millimeter wrench on that nut right there. So to get in here and remove the screws, you'll have to pull the carpet back. One of the things I did not catch early on, and I wish I would have, is this trim piece. This trim piece basically holds the carpet so you can't release it, so I ended up tearing it a lot because it was forced between this edge and the firewall. So to remove this, you just pull this way, just pull it straight toward the back, and these two clips will release, and you can get that out of the way. And hopefully you won't have to tear your carpet up as much as I did. I've got a lot of pieces, lots of little pieces to try to fit back in, and I may use some 3M spray adhesive to hold those in place. That's probably the best thing to use that I can think of, and I think I have some, so it makes it even better. What else? I think that's it. Just make sure you disconnect the battery before you do all this, because there is an airbag sensor right there. That little yellow tube is the airbag sensor, so you don't want to have power to the airbags or the airbag deployment system if you are working anywhere under here. This is the door. This is the rotating door that is outside air, inside air, and that is needing to be reset to the factory position, which is going to be all the way this way. So to the, I guess, clockwise if you're looking down on it. And in this model, there is a point, kind of a post, let's say, sticking down way up above the new blower here, but there's a post sticking down, and then this damper has a female socket, kind of looks like this, pointing up on the other end. So what you need to do is kind of feel around and get that thing seated so that it'll rotate properly. It's kind of a mess, kind of difficult to do, but when it's in, this space is only about 1/4 of an inch. See, it's on there right now. It should rotate without the top moving. It should be on without the top coming off as center point. So that's when it's on, and that's when it's not on. It's going to be crooked. It's not going to turn easily, no matter which way you put it. So make sure that pivot up top is aligned, so this is easily pivoting when you put it back together. Now, on mine, this is the spline shaft socket where the stepper motor will connect when I'm putting this back together. That was the first thing you took off the bottom with the two bolts, and this on my model clips into the lower housing